just like his mom and dad and his sister Nargis. And Amir, I think from the first time I've met you, it's hard to imagine that Amir's about to graduate from high school and go off to college at Brown, a very prestigious university. You know, the values that Amir represents are demonstrated by his parents, and you can see that in the way that Amir lives, in the way that he reaches out and he's always there. I think our NFB Bell Academies, I can't imagine them without Amir. We managed barely without you, Amir, once, but Amir is always there at our Brown Challenge, at our state conventions, at bingo, you name it. Amir is always willing to step up and to help realize, as a sighted brother, you know, that blindness is just a characteristic, that Nargis is first and foremost his sister, and she happens to be blind, and Amir helps us in the work that we do so much by the way that he helps educate people about blindness and the way that he and Nargis get along. As a little sister with a brother like Amir, I know what a special bond Nargis and Amir have, and Amir, I want everyone to know, offered and said, hey, I would love to present and share with everybody today, and I thought that was awesome. So I cannot wait to hear your remarks. Amir, I will turn it over to you.
Amir.
Thank you, Ms. Pam, for that wonderful introduction. I really don't deserve all those kind words, but I really appreciate you, Ms. Pam, and I really appreciate the Black community. It's really a wonderful community, and I'm really lucky to have been a part of this community through my sister. So, of course, Ms. Pam introduced me, but most of you probably may not have known me or may have known about me a little bit, but I'm sure that you know my popular nerd younger sister, Nargis Karimipour. I sure hope she heard that. Yeah, so before I get into my own perspective and experience as the brother of a blind individual, I wanted to share a little excerpt from a college application supplemental, which I wrote earlier this year. So, here we go. Right. Nargis, Arabic for narcissus, a flower, or not narcissist, narcissus. There's a difference. Yeah. It's a flower which symbolizes hope, rebirth, and new beginnings. In a similar way, my sister, Nargis, has served as the catalyst to the rebirth of my family's perspective. Nargis was born with dancing eyes, beautiful dancing eyes, which everybody initially disregarded as, you know, an adorable trait. However, as time went by and a year passed, she ended up crashing headfirst into a visibly open drawer. And on that day, those beautiful dancing eyes sort of transformed into an unfamiliar monster. I observed from the background as my parents went from ophthalmologist to ophthalmologist, appointment to appointment, desperately asking for a solution, only to receive glasses prescriptions and screen readers, which they knew wouldn't work. Why couldn't anyone help, I wondered? Why were my parents consistently brushed off? Aren't these people supposed to be trained professionals? These fruitless visits carried us all the way to California, where my parents met an ophthalmologist who specialized in Nargis' condition. And he was the one who finally gave an unexpected and long overdue wake-up call. He emphasized that it wasn't Nargis who was the blind one, but us. And that the best solution for her is not through a cure, but through adapting. And from then, what initially seemed like an impossibility transformed into a reality as Nargis learned how to read Braille from her amazing teacher, Miss Benita. Everybody give her a round of applause. Our distinguished teacher of the year. Yeah, she learned how to read Braille. She learned how to use the white cane, how to navigate technology, and non-visually complete daily chores and tasks. And now, her independence allows her to share speeches with audiences numbered in the thousands, always ending with the statement, "Blindness is not a disability, but a different ability." In medicine, there is never a miraculous cure that works for everyone. Nargis' story is not unique in this aspect of struggle. There are many doctors out there who neglect their basic responsibility of listening and showing understanding. They disconnect from the human experience and almost act as if they almost treat their job as like this robotic, dystopian sort of like way. And many patients and families who go through immense struggle, or they go through immense struggle as a result. And it's these types of people whose main priority is their paycheck rather than their patients' well-being. However, there exists some rays of hope, just like the doctor in California, who instead of giving another useless prescription, offered something much, much more valuable, the truth. Guided by his example, it's my aspiration to pursue a career as an ophthalmologist. Who can help individuals to adapt and overcome their fear of blindness. And by doing so, I hope to also become this sort of ray of hope for patients and families, one who can prevent this unnecessary struggle and ultimately help individuals, just like my sister, to find their passion, to be able to live the life they want with as much freedom and independence as any other human being deserves to have. So that was one of the supplementals that I used for all of my college apps, and as Ms. Pam mentioned, it's one of the ones that got me into Brown University. And though I hate to admit this in front of my sister, living with her has genuinely been one of the most, if not the most, rewarding and fulfilling experience of my life. God, I hope her ego doesn't get too high after this. So this experience has provided me with irreplaceable opportunities and lessons on life, which I would otherwise have not learned. And so first and foremost, being her brother has allowed me to connect and be exposed to this amazing NFB community. So I remember my first convention, state convention, it was about 4 to 5 years ago. And I remember telling my mom after, like, man, I feel like I was just like in a different world. Because, you know, just coming from an environment where, you know, everybody is sighted at school, like the only blind person in my life was my sister. And then all of a sudden jumping in and seeing so many people like using their cane, reading the Braille, talking to their screen readers, just like an air of independence which I've never been exposed to. It was really as if I was in a different world where these pre-made expectations of people were shattered, and you can really see that everybody's voice is heard and everybody is given the opportunity to live as they want. And I was really impressed, especially by the amazing sense of humor that this community had. As you saw yesterday, Mr. Rowland's dad jokes, and you know, just everybody has like this mood of like happiness and joy, and they're all like enjoying their life and see the positive in things, and everybody works together as a community. And even despite the fact that being blind is not an easy thing, and living in this system which is not very accommodating, it's not an easy thing to navigate, and yet still this community remains positive and moves towards growth and change. And one of the most valuable experiences I've had being part of this community, as Ms. Kim mentioned earlier, is volunteering for Bell Camp. So everybody shout out Bell Camp. Yeah, so Bell Camp, volunteering for that was genuinely one of the most rewarding and eye-opening experiences ever. Just, helping to inspire these young children to grow from being these dependent individuals and seeing them during the course of the week-long program grow into, much more independent, knowledgeable of Braille, technology, O&M, and having fun at the same time. It really is an amazing pleasure to see. And I really enjoy my time, spending time with the kids. Some of them are in this room. Emerson, I know, he's in here, Charity, some other kids. And so it's always like a highlight of my year to look forward. And unfortunately, last year I couldn't volunteer for Bell because I was, off doing college app building and stuff. But yeah, I look forward to coming back to Bell this year, hopefully. And yeah, so Bell is an amazing experience. But these lessons don't just stop at volunteering for the NFB and being part of this community, but it just comes from living every day with my sister. And so an interesting lesson of patience that I have is like simply just watching TV. So I'm big on TV. I love watching different shows. I don't know how many anime watchers we have in here. Yeah, so I really enjoy watching shows. And of course, my sister, being my younger sister, she wants to do everything that I want to do. So we used to watch TV together, but the problem is she can't see the screen. So she would go and sit in front of the TV, and while everybody would, complain and be like, move your head away from the TV, I would just, move to the side and, kind of adapt. And so it might be a small thing, but these types of experiences build up and sort of have me unconsciously build my patience and ability to, instead of just complaining at any inconvenience, even though it wasn't really an inconvenience, like literally you could just sit to the side of the TV and you could still see it, and she also sees it. But yeah, these small sort of lessons of patience sort of build up, and I don't think if I didn't have this blind sister that I would have learned lessons like this. I've also learned a lesson of just being able to listen, which is essential to being a doctor. And so Nargis, being blind and recently being deaf, she doesn't have a lot of, welcoming students at school. They're all kids, they don't really understand her, don't really approach her. And so she reached a period of time where, she didn't have that many friends who would welcome her and approach her. And so as a result, I felt obligated as her brother to listen to her rant, even though sometimes she would be a bother, annoying me. But I'd sit and listen to her and allow her to, dump all of her little facts that she's read in books. Sometimes I zone out, but just being there for her to listen to her. And allowing her to beat me up, just helping her, giving her advice whenever she wants, and just acting as this sort of like wall to lean on. Because I'm not her parents, but I'm not her mom, I'm not her dad, but I'm her brother. So I serve this role of just being there for her as her friend. Because it's different to understand, like sibling understanding is different than any other sort of like relationship you might have. It's more, I don't know, free, I'd say. And so yeah. And then I've also learned a lesson on, we're Muslims, so a lesson on God and the strength of spiritual belief. And so my sister genuinely is one of the strongest individuals I've seen. She's gone through so much, and yet she always has a smile on her face, and she's always happy, and she's always excited about everything. And like I always imagine, I'm like, any other person who's going through what she's going wouldn't be able to handle this, and yet she handles it with such strength. And she always says that, even if I don't have anybody, I always have my family, and I always have God supporting me from the corner. And so there's so many lessons that you can learn from just observing, just being the brother of a blind person. You're exposed to many things that other people would otherwise not be exposed to and not understand. And after listening and learning from the wisdom and the lessons of all the courageous and inspirational people within the blind world, and observing the invisible bonds which unify everybody in this community together, I can confidently say that the future is bright. It really does take a village, and I can clearly see within this village the strength and fortitude far beyond anything imaginable. Any inexperienced individual who does not know about the NFB, if you told them that such a group of independent people exists, they would never believe that such a thing is possible. And yet, it is. And I'm lucky to have seen it. And having seen it, I feel obligated to contribute. I feel obligated to use all of my efforts and to use all of my own strengths to push this movement forward. The system society is currently built upon, unfortunately, is fundamentally broken. And without fixing the foundation, there's no serious change that will be made. But through the NFB, I can see a glimmer of hope that change will occur. And I can already see change occurring. As Ms. Pinar mentioned earlier, there's change occurring, there's progress occurring. And it's moving at a fast pace. And so I promise, as the brother of a blind individual, and hopefully a future ophthalmologist, that I will invest everything into this movement of change. Because this is not just a blind movement, but it's a movement for humanity. And truly, I'm going to end this just like my sister would, because truly, blindness is not a disability, but it's a different ability. Thank you very much, everyone.
Amir, I can't wait to get a phone call from you when you're a doctor. I will for that referral, Amir. So thank you so much, and I love watching Amir and Nargis interact because it reminds me a lot of my brother growing up and the hilarious interactions between them. So thank you so much, Amir, for those great words. Congratulations on your next chapter. We know you're going to do great, great things. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I now would like to introduce